House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Brendan Strzok.
Yeah, well, I look at this.
With walkaway, by the way.
That's right, that's right. And now I think this is a clear indication of why. I look at this and I think to myself how hoodwinked we've gotten by the left for so long with this narrative that immigrants want, people want to come to our country just because they want to be a part of the American dream. These are peaceful people who just want to be a part of our country. That's not what I'm seeing here tonight. I'm seeing explosions. I'm seeing riots. I'm seeing people with Mexican flags, Palestinian flags, attacking our police officers. Where's this narrative that the left has been telling us for so long about how we're such bad people for not just letting people come into our country to pursue the American dream?
Yeah. 10 seconds, Natalie?
I think that's a great point. If these people are so peaceful, then why are they and their allies so utterly not peaceful the last 4 days? But I'm feeling kind of hopeful here. I mean, we can't get complacent, but I think that things are turning in a good direction. And honestly, I think more people are going to be walking away because this is a bad look for Democrats.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Whistleblower Wednesday, folks. The Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and X-Spaces simulcast. Well, what is the real story about the anti-America riots? That's what I call them. They're not just anti-ICE or anti-Trump. These people are opposed to you and me, the people that still believe in the freedom to live our lives in peace and prosperity. They oppose our very existence here and are demanding places like California be turned over to, now wait for it, Mexico. That's why you see the millions of invaders waving Mexican flags in the Los Angeles riots and around the country. They don't want to be Americans, but they want to come here and take our jobs and wealth only to send it back to their third world country. Yes, I said it. That's what I think of Mexico, and that's why I fully support our maximum deportation operations. These criminals even closed down a veterans clinic in downtown LA with their criminal behavior. Thankfully, citizen reporters are getting the truth out about the groups behind the riots and violence against federal law enforcement in places like Los Angeles, because the legacy media often doesn't. One of those courageous citizens is Brendan Strzok, the leader of the famous #Walkaway movement and campaign, and he joins me today to discuss the truth about what is happening on the ground in these anti-ICE riots. Brandon, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, sir. It's good to see you.
Great to see you too.
Hey, man, one of the last things I do in the evenings when I'm on my normal, what I call battle rhythm, is I sit in the bed before I go to sleep and I watch that show from California, Trace. And imagine my surprise when I go, wow, the legacy cable media has actually got Brendan Strzok on the TV. And I'm proud of you, man. I am so proud that you are still here, still in the fight after everything that's happened. We had you on the show to talk about your January 6th experience already. But let's talk and go in depth on these rioters down there, because you've been on the ground, right? You've been out there filming, talking to people and everything.
Yeah, well, I've been on the ground in Los Angeles attending what was sort of the riots into the protests. And then let's also not forget that they oftentimes show up at my events. So it's a combination of me going to them and them coming to me. One way or another, I spend a lot of time, tangoing with the left one way or another. But I did come to California about a week ago. And when I came on other business, but when I got here, the riots had begun. And so initially I got into town. The Fox appearance that you were just showing, that was when everything had just begun, basically that day or the day before. And then the next day was Tuesday, when I went downtown and saw with my own eyes. Now, Tuesday was the day that the National Guard arrived. So when the National Guard arrived, everything kind of went from a riot to a disorderly protest. I mean,
Mhm.
it certainly did its job effectively, I think, of setting a tone for a lot of these, what had been rioters in the previous days, that suddenly they found themselves very calm. But another interesting thing happened on that Tuesday. Mayor Bass actually instituted a curfew, an 8 p.m. curfew, and
Mhm.
apparently must have given the Los Angeles PD permission to actually do their jobs and enforce the curfew. And I was there. I was there all day long in downtown Los Angeles. And at exactly 8:07, 7 minutes after the curfew started, the police entered the protest zone I mean, really encircled the entire protest zone. And they came in on horses, they came in on foot, they came in on by cars. And these protesters went running. I mean, running. I mean, I literally have footage of them, some of them saying, I don't want to get arrested. I don't want to get arrested, and running out of there. So the point is that it's really amazing what happens when law enforcement is allowed to do their jobs, and
Yeah.
which really happened in 2020. Most of them were given stand down orders, and we watched the country burn throughout 2020. But now there
Mhm.
seems to be a different kind of atmosphere in the air, where even not everywhere, but some of the Democrats are, basically saying, maybe we should actually allow law enforcement to do their job. Maybe it's not a good look for us to be allowing our voting base to be burning the country to the ground.
Yeah, yeah, you would think. I mean, we're both political. We're in the political arena, so let's chat about that, about Bass's switch, so to speak, and flip flop there. What do you think got her attention enough to make her do that? Because she's pretty much a Marxist, I think, and is all for using mob violence to get her way.
Well, I have to imagine that part of what got her to change her tune was Donald Trump getting reelected. I mean, I mean, seriously though, because
Yeah.
all of the things that they did between 2021 and 2024 were kind of this mass pile-on technique, throwing everything but the kitchen sink out there to try to make sure that nobody would want to vote for this guy.
Hmm.
Whether it was criminal indictments, the civil lawsuits, the accusations of sexual assault, the insinuation that sparked an insurrection, everything that you can imagine, right?
Hmm.
And people still came out and made the choice to vote for Donald Trump. And I think that they had to look at this and say, our narrative about January 6th didn't achieve the goal that it was intended to achieve. These criminal indictments, the criminal convictions, none of this stuff did its job. So something in our approach is not working. And I think that this is an extension of that. I think they realize that they've created a monster.
Hmm.
They have created the Marxist base that they have, but they've created also, the radicalization. They've created the violence. I'm saying that they've created the atmosphere that has permitted these things. Now they have to figure out what the hell to do about it, because it's not doing them any favors anymore, but they also can't come right out and condemn it because
Hmm.
they allowed it. They permitted it to grow to this point. So I believe that it's possible that we're kind of like witnessing an experimentation phase where they're kind of asking themselves, what can we get away with in terms of pushing back against this atmosphere that we've created ourselves without completely alienating the people who are still on our side. And I think
Yeah.
they're trying to see how far they can get away with it.
Yeah. Were you able to, especially in the early days when you found yourself in the areas where there was violence, were you able to talk to any of these people that are in the rioter side when you're out
No,
front?
you can't talk to the people who are in that kind of like rider mode, or like
Hmm.
the Antifa anarchist mode. You can talk to protesters. I mean, you
Yeah.
can talk to leftists who are holding signs that say, Trump is this, Trump is that, maggots this, maggots that. You can talk to them. But the people who show up with the intent to commit violence or destruction or anarchy, they're wearing masks over their faces. They have an intensity about them that they're dangerous. I mean, they're dangerous people, so I mean, they're the kind of people that I would describe as maybe having nothing to lose, They're not the kind of people, it's kind of like if you went to a bar and, somebody shows up at a bar and they've got a bunch of scars on their face and they're, somebody, and they're like, let's go outside, let's go outside. You'd probably say to yourself, no, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go outside with somebody who has nothing to lose. And that's kind of what these guys are like. I mean, these are like violent, unhinged, deranged people, and they're not there to talk. They're not there to have a debate or discourse. They're there for one reason only, and that is to cause harm, destruction, and violence.
Yeah. Was your sense in the early phases that it was highly organized? I mean, I noticed that they were all of them were carrying Mexican flags the first couple of days.
Well, it's become more organized as time has gone on. And
Okay.
I think, there've always been more, there's always been organized groups, and I think more people joined those organized groups. So I think, I've always said Antifa doesn't make people violent. Violent people join Antifa because it's almost like this permissive culture for, if you're somebody who has a desire to hurt someone or you have a desire to cause, harm, you just like that's something you feel compelled to do. Joining Antifa is kind of this outlet where you get to get patted on the back and people will say, good for you for fighting fascism, when in fact you're really just acting on this basic instinct that you have to cause harm. And so I think that organizations that have planned and organized and been doing this for a long time, some of them have probably seen their numbers grow because there's always going to be people like that are drawn to that kind of energy. But it has definitely changed over the years. I mean, I've been being protested since 2018. And, it used to be people, holding signs saying, walk away Russian propaganda, walk away is this, walk away, whatever. But now it is absolutely, as I described, sort of like these flash mob groups. They show up in groups of 20, 40, 100 together out of nowhere. They're wearing matching masks. They're wearing matching shirts, hats, whatever. They've got some sort of orchestrated plan of how to make noise or how to disrupt, or, in more extreme cases, they'll just show up and 1, 2, 3, boom, smashing windows, throwing Molotov cocktails. So yeah, highly organized, not organic. It's not like a group of people, they're doing a protest and everyone shows up on their own and gathers together. I mean, I imagine these people are on Zoom calls leading up to it. They're making a plan. They're staking out the spot. Everyone has an assignment of what to do. So yeah, there's nothing organic or natural about it. This is a highly organized operation.
Yeah, and the No Kings protest, I had Enrique Terrio on last week, and he talked about how they had infiltrated their website, and they were doing Zoom calls and all kinds of things to prep for this. So there's got to be a lot of funding involved, too.
Right.
As we've suspected, we got to go to a break here in about a minute, but I wanted to ask you, pallets of bricks, that kind of stuff. We saw some social media reporting about it, but the big media, the legacy media, never said anything. But is that true, or did you see any of that? I guess I should ask the question that way.
I didn't see that, but again, remember, I was down there at the time after the National Guard showed up. Okay. So, and also, a lot of these protesters were marching. So I stayed pretty stationed near the federal building downtown and near City Hall. But different groups were kind of marching all around downtown Los Angeles. I know those things did exist. I mean, I know that there were pallets of bricks, and I know, and even throughout downtown Los Angeles, businesses were boarding up windows, and some of the businesses had already had windows broken and things like that had already happened. But I will say that once the National Guard showed up, things became much more calm. And there was a lot less of the rioting and violent destruction that we saw in the first couple of days.
Yeah. Yeah. Matter of fact, the opening clip for the next segment after the break here is, I think it's one of your pieces of video in front of a federal building with the National Guard and other forces there.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you specifically about what you heard and saw. We'll be right back with Brandon Strock. It's Whistleblower Wednesday. What's the truth behind the anti-American riots and protests going on across the country, but especially in LA where he's been. Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and my guest today is the founder of the hashtag Walkaway campaign, Brandon Strock, who's been out in L.A., just happened to be there when all this stuff kicked off with the anti-ICE, anti-American riots and everything. And Brandon, I think that was a clip of yours. At least that's why I picked it, because it was in front of that federal building with the guardsmen. But what got my attention on it and what I wanted to ask you about is they're yelling shame at the National Guard. How does that make you feel?
Well, yeah, and they were yelling a lot more than that too. I posted many clips over the last week, and there were some, pretty foul language being used in a lot of the clips, both calling them names and making really kind of vile comments, sexual comments towards them, and also comments about their race. What that was kind of interesting too. This was like a anti-ICE, Trump's immigration policies test, right? But a lot of these National Guards people were not Caucasian. In fact, the vast majority of them looked to be Hispanic, possibly Mexican themselves, Black. Which really enraged the protesters, so they were very upset that a lot of these National Guards people were non-Caucasian people and really going after them and being like, how could you do this? How could you do this? You're supposed to be one of us. You're supposed to be, and this is very much their mentality. It's that, it's like an us versus them, Black versus white. It's, they don't see this as like America, like united Americans. It's an extension of kind of the left's race war and the left culture war, I think, in which they very much do not see themselves integrated with America as a whole. They view it as like white America, conservative America, and then the rest of them. And so there was a lot of disrespect being shown to the National Guard, and a lot of that disrespect had to do with the color of their skin.
Yeah. That's really surprising because, in the National Guard, the units that they're using, I believe, are from their local units. So the majority of the people that join the National Guard in that part of the country are Hispanic and Black Americans. And for them to attack them, even verbally, is just really strange because, they're family members and friends and those kind of things, unless the people that are out there doing that really aren't from that area. Do you get any sense of that? I mean, I know it's not organic for sure, but I would think they'd want to hire people from within the same area. But honestly, I don't know.
I couldn't tell you for sure where the National Guards people were from, and they didn't speak. I never heard any of them say a word. I mean, they stood there, standing their ground, standing guard, and at different times, the troops increased and decreased. Early in the day, in the afternoon hours, the protests were very small. There might have been a dozen, at times maybe 2 dozen protesters. And usually during that time, the National Guard presence was about a dozen troops, maybe 18 to 20. But then in the evening, usually somewhere around 7 p.m., that's where these people would start showing up in groups of 100, or sometimes several hundred would show up at the same time. And then the National Guard presence would increase to, maybe like 3 dozen standing shoulder to shoulder protecting the federal building. And they never left, that stoop of the federal building. They just stood there in a line protecting the building. Never stepped on the stairs, never went onto the sidewalk, because that was sort of a narrative that was being pushed by the left too, almost that the National Guard was like joining forces with ICE to, conduct raids or make arrests. No such thing ever happened. I mean, they were really just there to protect the buildings and never came down off of that stoop, in front of the building. So that was not true. But anyway, yeah, they never, they always kept their composure. They never spoke. So I never had an opportunity to speak with any of the National Guards people.
Did the protesters get up close and personal, like close enough to spit in their faces or anything like that?
I was actually pretty surprised how close they were allowed to get at times, and without the National Guard even reacting, because there were certainly times that the protesters began to climb the steps. Now, remember, these guardsmen were just in a line right at the top of the steps. So to me, intuitively, that seemed too close for comfort that they were allowed to even go on the steps. But they were, and nothing happened. And some of them did begin to climb the steps and point at them and shout at them. In fact, I think that there were even a time or two where maybe some bottles, were being thrown, and they did have riot shields. So, they would have been able to protect themselves if anybody was throwing anything. But I do believe that there was once or twice where people got, nervy enough to try actually throwing something. But it never escalated. In my presence, it never escalated beyond that. But yeah, it was surprising to me how close they were allowed to get.
Yeah, and the verbal abuse. I mean, that's just very surprising. But we've seen it before, and so it shouldn't really surprise us. So we got a question over in the audience. Shell's our host over there. Go ahead, Shell.
Brandon, I watched some of the videos. They look pretty intense. And there were some demonstrators out there that got quite close to you and the walkaway movement, people that had joined you. Was there any time that you felt unsafe or unsecure?
Oh, so yeah, the video that Shell's talking about is actually of a walkaway rally that we did in Los Angeles. So it wasn't when I went to City Hall, but it was in West Hollywood, California. So we just did a walkaway march and rally, and we were counter protested by, I mean, honestly, I would guess at the minimum 100 of these protesters, and they were. Frankly, they were much more aggressive and much more agitated than any of the protesters that I saw downtown near City Hall. And yes, to answer your question, I was concerned. To be clear, I have a very thick skin when it comes to how people interact with me or treat me. What scared me was that I felt responsible for all of the people that were there for walkaway. So, when we all met in West Hollywood, we had probably 75 to 100 people that were with us. And then when we got to Beverly Hills, our rally grew to about 300 people that met us at Beverly Hills. But I felt very responsible for that 75 to 100 people who met in West Hollywood and did the march with us. And those protesters that were protesting us were getting physically aggressive. They were taking hats off of people's heads. They were grabbing signs out of people's hands. They were pushing my people, and my people were getting upset and reactionary. And there were more of them than there were of us, and there were almost no police presence there to protect us. We only had a handful of hired security officers that we had hired, and also I've played this game before, so I know there are certain areas in the country where you can go. Washington, D.C. is one of those areas. Los Angeles, California, Seattle, Washington. There's certain Portland. There's certain areas where you can go where even if somebody attacks you, if you're a conservative and you defend yourself, in all likelihood, you're going to be the one who goes to jail. And so I felt very concerned that some of my people could either get hurt or might even find themselves in a defensive posture and find themselves getting arrested. And we had to make a decision because we were initially going to do a march up and down West Hollywood and then over to Beverly Hills. And we ended up actually canceling the march up and down West Hollywood. And instead we just marched directly to Beverly Hills because I did have to make the decision that I felt like it was too dangerous for everybody to march up and down West Hollywood because they were just getting so aggressive. And I didn't want to see any of my people get hurt or get arrested.
Yeah, it's tough to maintain your composure when people are getting up in your space and taking things off of your body because you can smell them, you can feel it. They're taking your property, which is inherently, instinctively it's wrong. I have to do something about this, but you're absolutely right. I mean, we had intelligence that Enrique briefed us on last week about the No Kings thing where they were intentionally going to get MAGA people that showed up involved in violence so they could put all the violence blame on them.
Yeah, that's right. And that's, they're a lot more sophisticated than we are at this type of thing. For instance, at the Walkaway rally, they show up with noisemakers, whistles, all of these different ways in which they can make umbrellas. So they'll stand, shoulder to shoulder with each other, and then they'll open umbrellas. And what that does is create like a huge wall of umbrellas, and they point them at you, and then they'll advance. So, you're standing there kind of like with your signs doing your thing, and engaging in your First Amendment right to peaceful protest. Well, now you've got 20 people in a line coming at you with a wall of open umbrellas. So they're shielding and protecting themselves, and you've got pointy objects coming at you. Like they practice this kind of stuff and they know what they can do and what they can get away with. And going back to what I just said a second ago about the noisemakers and the things like this, it's actually, it might sound, like it might just sound like a perturbance or an annoyance of some kind. It's much more than that. Some of these things, it's almost like psychological warfare because it's hard to understand unless you've been in this situation. But if somebody's got like a blaring siren and they're holding it 2 or 3 inches away from your ear, it's like a shock to your central nervous system. And your nervous system is firing off impulses to react. It creates in you this desire to protect yourself and defend yourself because your nervous system is basically saying like, protect me, protect me. And you almost have to work 2 or 3 times as hard not to become physically aggressive because every impulse inside of you is saying, get this thing, you're under attack, do something about it. And that's what they want. That's what they want, because the moment that you physically react, again, you're going to be the one, because if if you're a Trump supporter, if you're a conservative, you go into these liberal areas and give them any justification to put you in handcuffs, you're going to be looking at big trouble.
Oh, you're absolutely right. That's why I wanted to get you on here to talk about this and these experiences, Brandon. We got to take another break. When we come back, I'm going to play a little public service announcement from the FBI in the area there, and we'll continue this conversation with Brandon Straka of the Walkaway campaign. Get people in here, man. It's rare that we get an opportunity to have him on the show, so we need to get our audience engaged and in here to listen to this man. I'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Hello, I'm Bill Asaley, United States Attorney for the Central District of California.
And I'm Akil Davis, the Assistant Director in charge of the FBI's Los Angeles Field Office.
And I'm Tyler Hatcher, the Special Agent in charge of IRS criminal investigation here in Los Angeles.
The right to assemble and protest peacefully is protected by law. Unfortunately, we have seen individuals whose intentions are to cause damage and to assault law enforcement. For example, last week we arrested an individual who was charged with conspiracy to commit and aiding and abetting civil disorders. These violent agitators put peaceful demonstrators at risk.
The FBI and our federal partners will continue to investigate individuals and organizations who are knowingly funding or committing acts of violence against law enforcement, as well as the destruction of property.
We are currently tracing money to determine who is providing funding for these riots. Funding crime doesn't just affect the criminals, it also disrupts entire communities. Each dollar funneled into illegal operations fuels violence, undermines law and order, and perpetuates fear. Make no mistake, we will identify and disrupt financial networks supporting these criminal activities.
Think before you act. The legal consequences for financing or aiding and abetting these crimes are harsh. They include imprisonment and fines.
If you have any information regarding individuals and/or organizations providing financial support to commit acts of violence or destruction of property, please dial 1-800-CALL-FBI or visit tips.fbi.gov. You can also upload your images and videos to fbi.gov/LA officer assault.
The United States government will continue to safeguard constitutionally protected rights, but we will not tolerate assaults on law enforcement, destruction of property, or any violent acts that puts the community in harm's way.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and my guest is the founder and leader of the #Walkaway campaign, Brandon Strock. And Brandon, I wanted to show that for the public service announcement, but also to get your thoughts because, as I mentioned, we interviewed about your J6 experience. This is a really good indicator, if I'm picking it up correctly, that the weaponized agencies, especially those three, may be making a turnaround?
Well, yeah, I should hope so. And it's probably worth mentioning too that the gentleman standing in the middle in that clip that you just showed is Bill Asaley, who recently has become the California U.S. attorney in one of the districts. I believe there's 5 districts. I'm not sure exactly which district. Bill Asaley was one of my attorneys for January 6th. One of my criminal defense attorneys. So talk about somebody who saw up close and personal, what the justice system actually turned into for 4 years under the Biden DOJ and has that experience under his belt. Bill is a young guy, but he was a federal prosecutor and then became a defense attorney. So he's been on both sides of it. And many times throughout my January 6th case, Bill would say to me, I've just never seen anything like this before. The government has just never engaged in this kind of way before. This is a completely new ball game, what they're doing and the way they're coming after people and the way that they're treating it. So I'm glad to see that Bill is in this role. And I'm glad to see that, I think that there's going to be a concerted effort to make sure from our leadership that what the government, what we just lived through for 4 years, under that type of, as we say, weaponized DOJ, that there's a new sheriff in town, and that things are going to be handled differently now going forward.
Yeah, differently as in equality before the law. I mean, this stuff is illegal. Conspiracy to commit violence, all of those stuff are crimes. And I noticed that they did roll up the individual that was passing out the bionic masks, face masks, in bulk last week. And that's also good news, because that's part of the logistics of the organization right there. And if they can get him to flip and find out who his connections are, then we can dive in from the organizational perspective and the funding perspective.
Well, yeah, and that's absolutely right. I mean, it's a matter, I think, that we need to cut off the head of a lot of, looking at so many of the problems that we have, whether it's the rioters or the media or whatever. It's if we cut the head off of these things, all the followers and all of the things that are the people who are actually executing on the vision of all of this chaos, it's all going to fall apart. Because as we've been talking about, this isn't legitimately thousands of people who have these very real and legitimate ideas about going out and creating all this anarchy and stuff. This is all part of a larger and more orchestrated plan. And so, but we've never really, I think, in the history of our leadership leading up to this point, properly investigated who is funding this, who is planning it, how is it coming together. And so I think it's a really positive first step that we have leadership now who wants to actually investigate these things and expose it and destroy it.
Yeah, destroy it and deter other operations around the country from becoming violent, like what we saw in the Summer of Love and the BLM, because these tactics and organization and procedures that you're seeing in LA initially, I'm sure they're happening in Chicago and New York City and those kind of areas now too, with their riots. Those are the same things that we picked up on. The citizens picked up on this kind of thing, like the pallets of bricks, the face masks, the organization, the funding, all in the BLM summer. That was picked up on, but it was never investigated, even though that was the Trump administration. So that's really good news. Well, we got a couple of questions from the live audience. Let's go ahead and take one. Dale, go ahead.
We have Cookie, sir.
Good afternoon. Nice to talk to you again, Brandon. I had two questions, if you might. How has there been any change in the protesters when you're going out, either when you first started during the last 4 years, and then now since Trump has been back in office? Just wanted to know if there had been a change in how you're confronted with these folks. And then the other one is, since you've been done, the pardons there, Trump is in office, how has your mindset changed, or maybe not even changed, to when you go to approach going out and try to get people to walk away?
So the changes that I've seen since Trump got reelected in the protesters are, and I'm not even 100% sure what it means, to be honest with you, but they're skewing in many cases a lot older. Which I think is interesting, which is not to say that there's not any young people. Of course there are, especially with something as massive as what's happened in the last couple of weeks, like the anti-ICE riots / protests. Many young people in these. But when I'm going out and I'm doing events and I'm seeing groups of 15, 20, 30 protesters, I'm seeing a lot of people in their 60s, 70s, sometimes even more than that, than I ever did before. And I'm not 100% sure why that's happening. It's something I need to put some thought into, but I know. So I actually started Cookie in 2018. So I've been doing this now for about 7 years. So for the first 2.5 years leading up to January 6th, when we were doing just walkaway colleges and walkaway town halls and debates and events around the country from 2018 through to, like I said, January 6th, most of the protesters that we saw were usually people in their 20s, maybe their 30s. And kind of the ranging from the kind of a crazed liberal all the way to like the Antifa types. But for some bizarre reason, in the last, 6 whatever months since the 8 months or whatever since the election, I'm seeing those people, but I'm also seeing a lot of like older people coming out to protest. It's very strange. So, I mean, that's one of the changes that I'm seeing. Other than that, I feel like all they really do is change costumes. I mean, they've swapped out the BLM shirts and the BLM hats for Palestinian masks and Palestinian flags and Palestinian, so whatever the cause is of the moment, and now it's anti, F ICE and F Trump and whatever. It's the costumes keep changing, but I feel like the people don't really change that much, other than that for whatever reason. I call them Grand Tifa, like, grandparent Antifa. A lot of these people, these older people are coming out. I don't know why. And your second question was, how has my mindset changed since Trump got elected? In terms of just like how am I feeling about the landscape or my own work, or what do you mean exactly? Is he still there?
Just how, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm here. When you go out and you're going to these events, and now that you're through with everything that had to do with J6 and that whole issue, do you have a different mindset when you're approaching going to the colleges or going to like when you just went out at LA?
I mean, I guess I would say that I have more of a sense of safety and security, because to be honest with you, it was, there was always sort of like this ominous presence hovering over me over the last 4 years. And if Kamala Harris had been elected, I think that would have gotten worse. And I think that the fear that we could be arrested or charged or falsely accused, I mean, that's a very sort of oppressive feeling to deal with. When you know that you can engage in peaceful protest, you can be not breaking the law, and you can be exercising your constitutional rights, but somebody can just falsely accuse you or falsely charge you, and you've got a government that hates you so much that they're going to not only allow it to happen, but participate in the persecution. It's a very oppressive feeling. And so I do feel a sense of liberation now that it's much less likely that I am going to be at a federal level falsely charged or accused, and certainly have more of a sense of freedom about engaging in my First Amendment protected rights to go out and protest or demonstrate or do street interviews or whatever I'm doing. So I guess I do feel more at ease about that. And I don't know, I mean, depending on where I go and when, the crowds sometimes don't bring up January 6th at all, which I appreciate, because, I would like to move on with my life and not keep talking about that forever. But sometimes it's kind of like the only card that they have to play. So there are times I go on college campuses or whatever, and all the kids want to do is say, oh, you're a domestic terrorist and you're a January 6th, this and that. And, and then we get kind of stuck in that moment for a while, and I have to talk about it, and then we move forward from it. But, for the time being, it's going to just be that way, I guess, for a while.
Yeah, well, I for one, Brandon, I'm glad you're back on the walkaway campaign and have re-energized that. I'm excited about that. We're going to talk about that. I've devoted the last segment to talking about exactly that, why you were out in California. I saw a conversation you had at a meeting with Steve Hilton, who's running for governor. I think he's a unique guy that could actually pull it off. I want to get your thoughts on that, and your thoughts on how fertile is the ground in California post riots. Do you think it'll have any positive impact on that to get people to walk away? We'll be right back with Brandon Straka.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
See, this is what happens when you get into these discussions all the time, Lawrence. We talk about it's the riders and the peaceful riders, which we know they're not peaceful. We see what they're doing. They're throwing stuff at ICE. They're taking it out on the police. But yet what we don't always talk about, and what Gavin Newsom and undoubtedly the mayor doesn't want to talk about, is the impact to the people who are just trying to live their lives. And look, we veterans in our town, especially LA, we have a large homelessness population of veterans, unfortunately, there, which we're working on fixing, that the president's taking initiative on. But we've got a lot who just need that basic care. And this ambulatory clinic, also our benefits office is closed as well. So people are having trouble getting, if they needed to come in for the benefits, they can't do that either. Our workers are displaced. Nobody talks about that. So I would love to see in all of his discussions, the governor out there and the mayor, why don't they actually talk about the real issue is, and that's that we can't get the services to the people that need it.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday. And that was VA Secretary, Veterans Affairs Secretary Doug Collins in the Trump administration talking about the Veterans Ambulatory Clinic and the benefits office where you go to apply for benefits being closed in downtown Los Angeles because of these despicable people being violent. They've had to close them down. And I don't know if you caught it there, but one of the largest homeless populations of veterans is right there in downtown Los Angeles. That's who's getting treated for the most part at that ambulatory clinic. It's disgusting. And my guest today is Walkaway campaign founder and leader, once again, Brandon Strock. And Brandon, before we went to the break, I asked you, is the ground more fertile, both in California and across the country, to even make Walkaway bigger than it was? Because it was huge before all this kerfuffle in 2021.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there have been a number of things, starting with the fires in California that began in January, and then these riots that are happening now, 6 months later. There's a string of incidents that are clearly demonstrating the failures of the policies of Democrat Party leadership in California, and how this party and these policies have really, really failed the people of California. And unfortunately, I think some people really have to suffer before they get it, but there's been a lot of suffering for the people of California. And I think a lot of people not only lost their homes, and I would say needlessly, a lot of this was very preventable, but then they're finding themselves in a position now where they're not even able to rebuild because they're getting so caught up in bureaucracy and red tape that they can't even, get the funding, get what they need to be able to rebuild their homes and rebuild their lives. And so I think that the time is absolutely ripe. It's not as outlandish as it might seem. I mean, California has been red before. I think California is very red. I think that California can and will be red again. But we've got to go in and, do the work, be talking to the people here on the ground, be persistent in these conversations and these relationships, and make sure that we're really having the conversations and educating people and extending a hand and explaining to them why there is another choice, a better choice for them. A lot of people, I think, just don't realize that they can walk away. They don't need to continue to support the party and the belief system that they have in the past that has led them to the point where they're at now, where they're living in a failed state and a failing state. They can change it. They can change their vote. They can change their mindset, the way that they think, and they can change ultimately the outcome of their lives and the success of their state. But I think it requires ongoing conversations and keeping that relationship and those conversations going. And that's what we're trying to do.
Will you be doing a long-term operation in California as this governor's race heats up and comes to fruition? When's the primary for them? You know?
I don't know when the primary is, but of course the election for California is going to be November 26th. We're doing a lot of work also right now in New Jersey and Virginia, who have governor's races that are happening this year in 25, November of 25. And the answer to your question is yes. We will be continuing to have on the ground game and outreach for the state of California. And what that's going to look like really is, in addition to what we've always done, which is putting a lot of emphasis on minority communities that are usually voting Democrat in large voting blocks. We're also putting a lot of emphasis on various faith communities that are typically voting Democrat too. And that's something different that we're doing. And so we're also going to be, I'm putting together like a ground game of volunteers who are going to be tasked with making sure that we have ongoing conversations and relationships with these communities. We don't just want to show up, once in a while and then disappear. We want to be, for instance, I was just in Virginia a little over a week ago. And while I was there, I went into Hindu temples and Sikh temples, and I went into Muslim mosques. And I actually had conversations with these communities who were very open, by the way, to having me there and listening to what I have to say. And then I was allowed to have a table outside and provide literature. And so we're going to get volunteers together to make sure that we're going back to these faith communities on a weekly basis and sitting with tables and continuing to have conversations and continuing to make sure that people have a voting plan and making sure that they're registered to vote and having conversations about the issues and the policies and getting people to change their mind. And so we're going to be doing that in California as well as New Jersey and Virginia and states around the country. But yeah, absolutely. And, we want to make sure that we're calling these people on the phone, sending them postcards and letters in the mail, keeping them engaged and keeping them informed about what's going on. So yeah, it's going to be an ongoing process.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I don't know. You probably don't. I'm sure you don't know this, but 2 weeks ago, Stacey Abrams and National Democrats tried to come in here and steal the mayors and city council races of my city, Gulfport, Mississippi, which is a city of a little bit over 70,000, the largest city on the Gulf Coast here. So I'm looking to help get organized, and maybe we could talk about who you've got on the ground here, or if at all, and because organizing to stay, I think, Brandon, is the right place to be. I'm working on a book that's coming out in December, and that's the key piece of what we're trying to educate people on is we are not organizing to out-organize the opposition, and we're not out funding at the grassroots level to out-organize the opposition. And we need to get better at doing that. That's why I like your program. Well, we got a hand up over in the audience. Let's go ahead and take that last question before we get to the end of the show. Go ahead, Shel.
We did have Krusty Puller, sir. Krusty, did you still have a question?
Can I wait a minute? I got a phone call coming in.
Sure. I'll come back to you in a minute. So when you go into a place like California, I saw that you were talking with Mr. Hilton, who's running for governor. Do you assess the candidate up against the demographics, the voter universe, and those kind of things? Does your team take a look at all that stuff?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have to. I mean, I met Steve about a week ago at an event that I was attending, and it just so happened that a couple who are supporters of mine and have been amazing financial supporters of Walkaway for years were hosting an event for Steve. They invited me to their home to be a part of the event. So I got to meet Steve for the first time. And it was a great opportunity to, raise my hand, ask a question, which I did. And then I posted that. And basically I talked to him about, again, the minority demographics, doing the ongoing outreach to these minority communities and the importance of that, and college kids. And so what I said to Steve is, I think these college kids would love to see a gubernatorial candidate come to their campus, not just to give a talk, but, sit down and table with us and let the kids approach the microphone and ask you questions. And he said he loved the idea. And would be very open to, having the debate and whatnot with them. So, that's what it's all about. And to answer your question about, selecting a candidate or getting behind somebody, certainly at a point like this, before a primary has happened, I would be very open to, I'd say, anybody who I think has good values, good policies, wants to align with Walkaway. If any conservative gubernatorial candidate, or maybe even independent, gubernatorial candidate wanted to get involved with us and get out there, we would be absolutely open to talking to them. And so I guess that's my way of saying, we're not officially, making an endorsement or getting behind any specific person. That was just an opportunity for me to get to know Steve a little bit better and extend that offer to get involved with Walkaway and what we're doing and reach our audience and reach more people. And he seemed open to that. So I hope that happens.
Well, I've never met him, but I've been observing him, especially since he announced for governor. And he brings a set of characteristics to the table very similar to President Trump, very similar. And I noticed his answer to you about going out where Republicans don't normally go is exactly right up my alley too. I'm the chairman of Gator Pack, a pack I created a few years ago. And that's one of the things I look for is people that are willing to go like into down here, especially into a Black American community, and talk at churches, talk to the community leaders, talk to business leaders in those areas, because a lot of times the consultants, they always say no when the candidates don't want to do that. I've had that happen to me over the years a couple of different times. So that's good news. I'm watching that with great interest. Okay, I think we got a hand up now over in the audience. We got about 3 minutes left, Show.
We have Morrison, sir. Morrison, go ahead, sir.
Hello, thank you for the mic. About the rioters, and there seems to be a connection with the crisis actors. I'm sure y'all have heard of that. There was a website, Crisis Actors. I can't find it. But isn't that basically who's doing the rioting? And if it's so organized, why can't it just get shut down? I don't understand why. I mean, they're easily trackable. So is there a connection to the crisis actors? Does anyone know?
Well, I would say that it's important to remember too that when we talk about the riots or the protests being organized, funded, and not organic, we're talking about the portion of it that is sort of like planned and organized. But these things do attract a lot of people who are not a part of that organization or that plan as well. So certainly, when you see, 10,000 people out in the street marching, at some of these things, the vast majority of those people probably decided to join up with something because they saw it on television or they read in the news and they were like, oh, that's, I'm for open borders, so they go and they join it. But certainly not every single person who's there is, as you say, a crisis actor or somebody who's part of it. I think that a lot of the people who are funded and a part of this sort of planned portion of it, they're there to orchestrate an outcome, whether that's to agitate the crowd or provoke violence or take, maybe even, and to a certain degree, we even sort of saw that on January 6th. There were an enormous amount of Trump supporters who were there, because they wanted to come and peacefully protest a stolen election. But I think that there were people that were sent into that crowd to agitate, to instigate, and make sure that a different outcome happened. Yeah. So, when we talk about it being planned or orchestrated, we're not talking about everybody. And so it would be impossible to just shut it down. People do have a First Amendment right to protest. But unfortunately, I think that a lot of these people infiltrate to try to affect a different outcome.
Yeah, and even some of the paid protesters, like the CEO that created a company to pay demonstrators, those are legit. They have a paper trail. They have to follow the law. But there are some other ones that are behind the scenes and under the table, so to speak. Well, Brandon, thank you so much, sir, for coming on the show. We appreciate it. Tell folks how they can find you, and I look forward to talking to you about the New Jersey effort. I have good friends in New Jersey. I'm monitoring the governor's race and the congressional races coming up soon very closely.
Sounds great. Yeah, if you're currently listening right now on X, please give me a follow. My handle is my name at Brandon Strzok. My last name is spelled Straka, like Straka. And you can find me on just about everything, whether it's Truth Social, Facebook, X, Instagram, just about everything. My handle is at Brandon Strzok, Straka, Brandon. The only one that's off is TikTok. It's Brandon Strzok 1 if you're going to follow me on TikTok. And give us a follow on Walkaway too. We're on every platform at Real Walkaway. We have a Facebook group too, Walkaway Campaign. So join our Facebook group. Amazing testimonials, people sharing their stories about walking away from the Democratic Party. We're out there kicking butt and getting a lot of people to walk away and doing great work. So keep following what we're doing, keep supporting us.
Keep leaning forward, stay positive. We're going to win, folks. We're going to win with people